Hey guys, welcome back to a page in the chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige and today we are going through the 10 worst books that I read in 2021. So I don't usually like to be a negative Nelly. So I started off with the 10 best books of 2021, which you guys can go and check out if you were interested. And now unfortunately it is time for the 10 worst books of 2021. I did say a couple weeks ago in a video that I would know after I put the lists together for these two videos how my year of reading actually went. I can say with certainty now that it was a very good reading year, because putting together the list for the 10 best books was much easier and I had a surplus of books than for this video, because it was actually kind of a struggle to find books for this video, and I'd actually say that some of these maybe don't deserve to be on this list, but in order to hit that 10 mark they found their way onto it. They made the cut. If you guys like the sound of this video and you would like to stick around and see more, why not hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I upload twice a week on a Wednesday and a Friday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you guys to enjoy, and there is still plenty of yearly stuff to come. I still have to do my 2022 TBR, my anticipated releases, some vlogs are on the way. It's all very, very exciting. I am looking forward to the content that I have coming up, so subscribe if you are interested. Do also feel free to check me out on Instagram and Twitter at Page and Chapter. I post pictures of books, my dogs. You can see more of what I'm reading and how I'm reviewing it at the time rather than having to wait for these kinds of videos. So, and with that, let's get into the 10 worst books of the year. So this list is in no particular order whatsoever. I know that my best books video had a tiny bit of structure to it, but this one does not. It is just 10 books that I really didn't enjoy last year, in no particular order. So the first book on this list is Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl, and this follows our main character Paul, and he is a shapeshifter, but he can shapeshift in the fact that he can change genders or change sexes. It's ever so slightly historical fiction. I think it's set in the 80s or the 90s or something around there, set in San Francisco, and I was expecting this book to really kind of broaden my horizons in terms of discussions of gender and sex and things like that, but wasn't really like that. I didn't feel like the historical fiction setting came through at all. Some people, when I have said this, have disagreed with me though, so maybe this is just a me thing, but I didn't really pick up on it. I felt like it could have been set in any time and the story would have still been the same. It was very overtly sexual, and the times, especially when Paul had assumed the sex of a female, very sexualized, very overtly talked about as well, which is not a bad thing, but it just creeped me out a little bit and I didn't really respond to it well, and this whole book in general just gave me the ick. It's as simple as that. I did not like it very much at all, so it has found its way onto this list. We then have a controversial one, because this next book is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I did really enjoy the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I do think the first book was the best of the bunch in that trilogy, but overall I did still enjoy the trilogy, just didn't enjoy who our main character ended up with. But this book just didn't really do it for me. It is one of the most beloved books in the booktube community. Everybody's obsessed with this book. Everybody's obsessed with this like duology to insane levels. But I am just not a part of this crowd. I really could not get into it. I didn't really care for any of the characters. I couldn't really tell you a single thing that happened in this book. It was just making me zone out. It could not hold my attention at all, and I think it was just an issue with the characters, because I like the idea of this book. This book is a found family fantasy heist novel, so it sounds kind of perfect. I do enjoy heist movies and heist books as well. I think work really well, especially in a fantasy setting, and especially with this like ragtag group of bandits that Leigh Bardugo has put together, and she kind of does this in some of her other books as well, but it just didn't mesh very well with me. I have never been so bored when reading a book in my entire life as when I read this book. And don't even come at me and tell me that I didn't want to like it, because I have the absolutely stunning, like, foiled collector's edition versions of both Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. So you have no idea how badly I wanted to love these when I have the collector's editions. I might give them another go this year, who knows. I am very, very much in a fantasy mood at the moment, especially a YA fantasy mood. So I'm not putting these as a complete write-off. I am willing to give them another go and see if it was just the mood I was in at the time. But for now, and for how I enjoyed Six of Crows last year, it is on my worst books of 2021 list. And then the next book is probably again going to be another bit of a controversial one, because this one really blew up on BookTok, and that is You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is a friends to lovers story about our main characters Poppy and Alex, and they go on holiday together every single year until one year they have a major falling out and they don't speak to each other for the next 2 years. And the present day of this book follows our main character Poppy as she is really suffering with a quarter-life crisis, really, about what she's doing with her life, and so she convinces Alex to go on one last trip with her so that they can rekindle their friendship and she can just kind of figure out what on earth she wants to do with her life. And I had such high hopes for this book. I was really hoping that this book would carry Friends to Lovers. I had seen little snippets of it on BookTok when it blew up over the summer and just really thought that I was going to love it from what I had read. But the Friends to Lovers just didn't quite work for me. I do think that Emily Henry managed to give them like some tension in the present day, but then you flitted back to the past tense when they're friends and there's just absolutely no tension there at all. I found myself towards the end of the book literally just skipping the past bits, especially because I had worked out, even just from hearing the synopsis, what this big mystery of what had caused their falling out was. It's so obvious. It's so, like, it's painfully obvious that you will convince yourself that that isn't what happened. It is what happened. And that was just another reason why I couldn't with this book. It was predictable. It didn't even try to do anything different. The Friends to Lovers just didn't really work for me. I found myself getting really bored towards the end of the book. And I found Poppy to be such an irritating main character. She is very, very I'm not like other girls-y, and it bugged me. She also, like Poppy as a character, had zero understanding of boundaries with Alex in her friendship, and I understand that that is part of the plot because they have supposedly like always been in love and just like not known it, because that is kind of the whole point of the Friends to Lovers trope. But Poppy crossed so many boundaries at times when Alex was in a relationship and then blamed the other girl for causing problems when Poppy is the problem in this whole relationship. Alex is fine, if not a bit of a boring character who doesn't contribute much, but he's there, you know. But I just found very little to like about Poppy and just didn't really want to root for her. It didn't like this book at all. It was a major letdown. I think the fact I was excited about it just made this book's fall from grace that much further. And yeah, very firmly and safely on this list. I knew this was on the list before I even looked at the books I'd read. Let's have a look what the next book is. Okay. So this next book is a graphic novel, and that is This One Summer by Mariko Tamaki and someone else whose name I can't remember, but they are related. I think they're sisters. And Mariko Tamaki is the author of Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which made its way onto my top 10 best books of 2021. But this book was a swing and a miss. So I think it's maybe a tiny bit unfair for me to judge this book because this one is a middle grade when her other book was a YA, so maybe that explains why this one just didn't mesh with me at all. But this one follows our main character and her parents are fighting a lot, having a lot of problems with her marriage, and so they go away for the summer, and it's very much about our middle grade main character learning how to deal with that situation as a child from a child's perspective over the course of this summer at this lake house, I think it was, and making friends. The problem is that I just didn't really feel like anything happened in this book. It was a lot of our main characters trying to rent scary movies that they were far too young for, and then watching them, and that was about it. Like, there weren't enough plot points in this to keep me going, and I think potentially it's a series or there's multiple volumes, so that could be why. This book also felt much darker in tone than Laura Dean did, so that could also be why I didn't like it. But basically something about this just really did not click for me. It wasn't what I was looking for, and I find it very difficult really to like graphic novels. The only ones I have liked are Laura Dean and the Heartstopper volumes. I really tried to like this one. I really thought that I was going to be onto something by reading by the same author, but yeah, this one really wasn't for me. It was a bit too dark, not enough really happened, and I just didn't really get the point in reading about this young girl having problems with her parents. Maybe if I was at that middle grade age it would be good, but then I also didn't really know if this book was that appropriate for a younger audience, so I think it also got a bit confused in terms of who it was writing for and who its audience was, and that really came across as well. So yeah, didn't enjoy this one. And then the next book I have talked about hating so much that I'm really not going to dwell on this one for long, and that is the Crazy Rich Asians series. I'm just going to talk about the whole series as a bundle. I do think the first one is actually not that bad, but my enjoyment of that first one and my perception of that first one is then absolutely destroyed by the next two. It's very rare, even when I hate a book, that I will get to the end of it and think this should never have been published, and that's how I feel about the Crazy Rich Asians series. There are so many good books out there that are struggling to get published, and this pile of crap somehow made it. It was so long, so wishy-washy, and once again, absolutely nothing happens in these books. It is just like 300 pages a pop of rich people shopping and being mean to our main character, who is supposedly not rich but is also very well off. I would highly recommend just watching the movie instead of reading these books, because the movie adds comedy for one thing, so it's bearable. The movie also kind of mixes things that happen in all three books into just the first one, and the movie also kind of makes it this very like light-hearted romantic comedy, and the book is not like that. I don't know what the book was trying to be, but it's awful. It's awful. Save yourself the pain that I put myself through, and I did this to myself because I actually, even after only the first one and then hating the second one, I still read the third one. So I did this to myself, but just avoid it at all costs. Save yourself the pain. And next up, we have The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. And I really wanted to like this. This is my first N.K. Jemisin, and I was hoping for a 5-star read so badly. So this is an alternate reality type of book where major cities have souls, and these souls have to join together and fight off a demon, otherwise the city will die. And this follows the 5 souls of New York as they have to get to the bottom of the fact that they are the souls of New York, find each other and, you know, help each other stay alive and save the city of New York so that it doesn't die and can be rebirthed into this sort of like utopia. So this book is told multi-perspective from every single different like perspective of the souls. There's one soul to represent every like borough or like section of New York. So there's like Manhattan, Brooklyn, Staten Island. I can't remember any of the other characters, but it's kind of broken up like that. And the only perspectives that I particularly enjoyed were Staten Island, and she was barely in it. And she was also done majorly dirty by my girl N.K. Jemisin. I just really struggled with this book. It was very much sold as a fantasy. I found it in the fantasy section. N.K. Jemisin is a fantasy author, but this book is so sci-fi. Even these like monsters that they're battling with are described in very alien-like ways. And I am not a sci-fi reader. I don't really like sci-fi, and so I definitely think that that's why I didn't enjoy this book. That is essentially what it came down to, is it was just missold. The branding and advertising for this book is wrong. It is a sci-fi, not a fantasy. This book is also so slow to get started. You're about halfway through the book, maybe even over halfway, before the plot and what the direction of the book even becomes clear. So essentially there wasn't really anything that I liked about this book other than Staten Island. Wasn't really worth having to read through every other perspective and everything else that was going on just for the very small role that she played in the book. This book is a series. I thought going into this book that it was a standalone. It's not, it's a series. To me, it just wasn't worth it. There was nothing about this first book that made me want to read the rest of the series or convince me that the rest of the series could be any good. So it's found its way onto this list. And then we have another one that I've talked about a lot and I feel like you would be expecting, and that is Always and Forever, Lara Jean, the third book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series. The first two for me were fine, but again, this was a book that I really felt like didn't need to exist and shouldn't have been published. For one thing, again, nothing happens in this book. It very much tells the story of Lara Jean's dad getting into a relationship, which I'm sorry, I just don't care about. I've been reading this series for Lara Jean and Peter, not her parents. I know it's a very family-oriented book, and normally I do really gravitate towards that, and I loved that in the first two particularly, but in this book it was just too much family. And then the other major thing that hindered my enjoyment massively with this book is that I think it was such a bad portrayal of a relationship and very unhealthy message for young adults to be reading, especially now as the movies are on Netflix and were massively popular. It's really not good to be putting this out there. So in this book, Peter would constantly throw hissy fits and start arguments, and then Lara Jean would be the only one trying to solve the problem and get to the bottom of it and apologise. She would even have little like soliloquies where she would know that it was Peter's fault and he should be the one trying to make it up, but yet she would still be the one there like baking him his favourite food or something to try and fix it or get him talking to her. And I really don't know if that is something that we should be publishing. Everything about Peter goes downhill after the first book. He's a major like dick in the second book too, but I can forgive it because it has a good plot line. But in this third book, there was absolutely nothing redeeming about it, and it bugged me. And then this next book is kind of the one I was thinking of when I said perhaps it didn't deserve to be on this list. I mean, it was by no means a favourite. It was definitely, you know, toward the bottom of the pile, but would I say it's like one of the worst books? I mean, yeah, it was one of the worst books, but I feel like putting it on this list makes it seem like reading it was a much worse experience than it was. I did kind of enjoy reading this one. It's just in terms of, compared to the rest of the books that I read this year, it was one of the worst. And that is A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Camera. This is the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling following Harper, who gets taken into this parallel universe, which is like a medieval kingdom called Emberfall, where she has to work to try and free the prince and the members of the castle of Emberfall from their spell cast by this evil witch, and yada yada yada. You know the plot of Beauty and the Beast. I liked the first book because it had some real diversity to it. I really enjoyed the Beauty and the Beast elements, and I thought that it was really fun to read, and I had a really good time with this book. It didn't blow me out of the water, like it wasn't anything particularly special, but I did enjoy it. And then this book doesn't really follow Harper and the Prince of Emberfall, whose name I've forgotten. It follows his like second in command, captain of the soldiers guy called Grey. Didn't love that too much. I like Grey as a character, but the character development of everyone in this book felt very reminiscent of another particularly well popular Beauty and the Beast retelling called A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this second book felt ridiculously similar to A Court of Mist and Fury, and even kind of the direction of where the plot was going felt very A Court of Mist and Fury. And I do appreciate that because they are both Beauty and the Beast retellings, they would be similar, but I don't think they should have been similar in terms of character development. However, I did really like some of the characters that were introduced in this book, and I don't think it was the worst of the books that I read. I think this one is like probably the best of a really bad bunch in this list, and It was, you know, somewhat enjoyable. However, I won't be continuing with the series. I have DNF'd it. Putting it on this list feels a little cruel. I needed to hit 10. And then the penultimate book on this list you're all gonna kill me for. I feel like such a horrible fantasy reader for putting this one on here. It's Prairie of the Orange Tree. I said it, I'm sorry. I gave this book like 1.5 stars, maybe 2 stars. I really didn't enjoy it. And it was such a long book that the lack of enjoyment made it feel that much worse. So Prairie of the Orange Tree is like a massive fantasy book, like an 1,000-page like fantasy book, following 4 or 5 different stories that then all kind of come together and weave in together at the end. So kind of like the main storyline follows our main character, and she's this like warrior type of spy kind of character, and she is given an assignment at this castle where we have a queen. It's a queendom, and it's an LGBTQ story about our female protagonist warrior and the queen of this kingdom. I'm confusing myself even trying to describe this plot. It was a little bit too much for me, and I didn't think it really worked out. The only perspectives and parts of the plot that I did enjoy was this romance between our queen, whose name I've forgotten, and a princess who I think her name was like Eid or something. I did really enjoy that subplot, but again, it wasn't enough to make reading the other like 800 pages worth it. It was such a chore. I think as a series this book may have worked better, or maybe as a TV show this book would have worked better. I think Samantha Shannon has said she's expressed interest in writing a sequel. Honey, no, I couldn't. To me this book was awful. I am proud of myself for finishing it because it's such a big book and kind of one of those like classic fantasies, but god, did it nearly kill me to finish it. I hated this book so much. I just couldn't follow along with what was happening. I really didn't enjoy any of the perspectives, and it just didn't need to be that long. You could literally have cut out 50% of this book or started the book 50% later, and it honestly still would have all made sense. Like, I understand the argument for world building, and I am very big on world building, and I like reading world building, but not like 600 pages just of world building before you even get into the main plot. Like, how is this allowed to be published? Like, some of these authors are just successful, so they're allowed to publish anything, and it bugs me because this was not good. And I'm just gonna like sit back and wait for the hate on this one, because I know this is a very beloved book. Not many people are going to agree with me, but hey ho, it's my opinion, we're all different, and I hated this book with like almost every fibre of my being. I could genuinely see this being like really up there with like the worst of this whole bunch. And then the very final book on this list is a little bit anticlimactic after Prairie of the Orange Tree, I will not lie, and that is Monstrous Volume 1, which is again a graphic novel, except this time I thought I would try a fantasy graphic novel because I like fantasy novels, and this particular graphic novel is about this warrior girl who's like half girl, half monster. I thought it would be fun to try something different. However, this one again felt very much like it was either written by a man or written with the male gaze in mind. There was a lot of nudity and a lot of girls in like really weird kind of situations, and again, her being this half monster, half woman thing was quite sexualized, and I'm starting to see why women don't read as many graphic novels or like comics as men do if most of the fantasy ones portray women in this kind of light. I'm just gonna stick to my little contemporary romance graphic novels, I think. This book, much like some of the others that I didn't like, was much darker in tone and topics than I was expecting. I like fantasy, and I like the genres that I like, obviously, but I really don't like it when books are super dark, especially graphic novels. Like, I will usually pick up a graphic novel because I want something easy to consume, and if I go into it and then I find that it's actually ridiculously hard-hitting, it's just gonna ruin my enjoyment a little bit. So yeah, wasn't a great year for graphic novels really, but what can you do? Leave some of your suggestions down below, maybe I'll check them out and enjoy those more. But yeah, I did feel like the over-sexualization of women in this book just made it feel like it was written for the male gaze. That doesn't mean that the story is bad, it was just too much for me to get into. Wasn't really written for me in mind, I guess, and that's okay. And so that is my list of the 10 worst books of 2021. I've tried to like speed through them a little bit because I don't want to like bring my mood down or bring anyone's mood down by being a negative Nelly. The main thing with most of these books is that it was just a feeling. They're not all super analytical reasons or good reasons, some of them it's just a feeling. I just didn't enjoy them. Sometimes we don't always know why we enjoy or don't enjoy something. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do leave your worst reads of 2021 down in the description, just so I can know to avoid them. Or sometimes I actually find that bad reviews make me want to read the books more. So if any of my bad reviews prompted you to go and check out a book, let me know which book down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. If you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more from me, then do feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below. I upload twice a week on a Wednesday and a Friday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, you're enjoying everything that you are reading, and there are no reading slumps in your future. And I will see you on Friday for my next video. Bye guys.